Good morning. My name is Carolyn Tillman. I'm a retired San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools Administrator, and I am delighted to speak to you about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is something that many Americans know very little about. We're all familiar with July 4th, 1776, being Independence Day for the United States. However, on July 4th, 1776, not all Americans were free. So I'm going to go back just a little before I go forward and explain Juneteenth. I'm going to go way back in United States history to 1619. 1619 is when the first Africans were brought to Virginia. When they were brought in on the ship, they were sold into slavery. Now you can imagine early United States, we had little colonies that were trying their best to survive. They had come from Britain and were being supported by Britain. And the temptation for having labor was hard to resist, particularly free labor, because you're talking about people who at that time were farming, building. That was hard work, sweat jobs. And to have men who were free decline to do it or not do it for long would not produce the kind of economic impact that they were hoping for. So when they had the opportunity to buy human beings and work them for free, they could not resist, and that was the beginning of slavery in America. From 1619, we'll forward back to 1776. Now, the founding fathers, when they were writing the Declaration of Independence, did consider, maybe we should free our slaves. Maybe this freedom ought to be for everyone. But because many of the 13 colonies were engaged and their life was dependent upon the free labor, particularly in the South where they were growing rice and cotton and making great money from it, building cities, building homes. All of that was done free by African slaves. They thought not to free the slaves in 1776. So you can imagine, as time marched forward, there was a division in America about whether all of America should be free or just some of America should be free. And there were people called abolitionists who argued in the legislature, who argued in public meetings and in their community that America should be free for everyone. But this got to be such a division by the late 1800s that there was a question about going to war in order to preserve slavery in America or to free the slaves. And America was divided north and south. The north wanting freedom, the south wanting to remain with slavery. So that's why we're here today at the Lincoln Shrine in Redlands, because Lincoln played a very central role in the story of Juneteenth. The Civil War started in 1862, and as a strategy, Lincoln decided that for the 11 states that seceded or left the Union, that he would declare the slaves in those 11 states to be free. It was a strategy. It was a strategy to prevent the South from getting support from Britain or France, because those were countries that did not allow slavery. And it was a strategy so that those slaves who were free and left the South would come north. And not only could they just live free in the north, they could support the war effort in the north. By 1863, Abraham Lincoln created what is called the United States Colored Troops, and then they even armed ex-slaves to be able to fight for their own freedom, which was a great strategy and impetus to strengthen the power of the North in the winning of the war. In the executive order that Lincoln wrote was called the Emancipation Proclamation. And the Emancipation Proclamation was kept a secret in the South, as you could understand. Southern people, particularly in the state of Texas, did not want their slaves to know that they were free. And so it was kept secret from the slaves in Texas. Maybe some slaves knew about it and ran away to the north. Maybe some slaves knew about it, but because Texas was so adamant about maintaining slavery, they would have had no way to survive, even if they wanted to be free in Texas. And so they remained with their masters. Texas was able to keep the slaves from learning about their freedom even after the end of the Civil War, which ended in 1865. So they didn't learn about their freedom. The war was over in April, but they didn't learn about their freedom until Abraham Lincoln wrote another General Order Number 3, and he sent his general to Galveston, Texas, General Granger, and General Granger read the General Order Number 3, which finally stipulated that not only was there freedom for slaves in the North and in the South, but particularly in Texas. And that day that General Granger read that General Order Number 3 was on June 19th. And that's what we're referencing when we say Juneteenth. Everyone was so elated to learn of their freedom. And the slaves in Texas remembered that day as being the day that they were free. And indeed, we adopt it because it means the day that every person in America was free. Now, I never learned about that story until I was an adult, about the Independence Day for all of America, Juneteenth. I didn't read about it in my books because my family wasn't from Texas. I didn't learn about it even in oral history given to me. I actually learned about that when I was working and invited to a Juneteenth celebration. But because I didn't understand the term or didn't know about it, made sure I read up on it, learned a little bit about it, and this is the importance that I want to stress to you. While I was at that event, there were reporters, and they were going around asking people why they were there celebrating that day. What was significant about June 1865? And not very many people, African American people, couldn't even respond and answer with what I just shared with you. So I tell you this to encourage you to learn your history, study the various events, even the ones that the history is there. Sometimes it's not always in your history classes that you learn it, but it is there. There, study it, and share it with your family members. With that, I will end my story to you about Juneteenth and wish you a happy Juneteenth celebration, which is now a national holiday.